They called it a game, a cleansing. We called it what it was: feeding time. The Colosseum had no ceiling, just void. Above, stars circling like carrion birds over a planet that wasn't supposed to fight back. The alien audience sat in crescent, rows of black stone and golden bone, watching with the joy of a species convinced it could never be touched. The banners above them bore the sigils of over 100 conquered worlds. Earth wasn't one of them. Not yet. They led him into the pit with no ceremony. No armor, no rank, no name. To the Empire, he was just another Terran. Designation: mammal, class C, bipedal, primitive, resistant to sedation. Unremarkable. Except, he wasn't resisting. He walked out into the arena barefoot, breathing slow. Pale scars across his chest. A burn that hadn't healed right along his shoulder. One eye nearly shut from an old injury. And he didn't flinch as the gate across from him opened. The Razak entered like a blade unsheathed. 8 limbs armored in dark metal, moving too fast, too clean. One of the Empire's most reliable executioners. Not a soldier. Not a duelist. An eraser. The announcer's voice rang cold and cruel. Let the mammal entertain us before it dies. Laughter rolled down from the high seats. He didn't look up. He was watching the way the Razak circled. The way its joints clicked just slightly. The spacing of its stance. The dust it kicked. They thought he was frozen. They always thought that. The Razak lunged, blades high, flashing. And still, the man didn't move until the last moment. Then, a pivot, a slip under the strike, a reversal. Suddenly, the Razak stumbled sideways, off balance. A harsh cry erupted from the crowd. When they looked closer, they saw its forearm was damaged. Its momentum had been used against it. The human stood 10 paces away, empty-handed, breathing harder now, but alive. He didn't fight like a soldier. He fought like someone who had run out of choices a long time ago. The Razak attacked again, faster, meaner. Its strikes louder now, less elegant. The human moved tighter this time, riskier, letting it get closer, too close. Something shifted. The Razak hesitated. Blood dotted the floor, alien blood. And the Terran was still on his feet, in the stands. A Threnxi observer, a cold-blooded political species, turned to its handler and said, "They were supposed to break easily." The warden didn't laugh now. He stood, raised his voice. "This is not victory. It's defiance." But the man finally moved toward the Razak, quick, quiet, but final. And when it fell, hard and sudden, the pit didn't erupt in screams. It went silent, because prey wasn't supposed to win. The gate opened again, but not for a cleanup crew. A new figure stepped through, tall, armored, not human. She didn't address the crowd. She looked only at him and said, "This one shouldn't be here." The second figure stepped into the arena not to finish the fight, but to assess the outcome. She was Thalari, six-eyed, armor-pierced diplomat caste. Her species valued precision over chaos, and her posture radiated cold disdain. "You survived," she said to the blood-drenched man. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. His knuckles were white around the shard still in his hand. Around them, the crowd had fallen into a strange, acidic quiet. Some leaned forward. Some leaned away. The illusion of superiority had cracked. Barely, but it had cracked. Worse, it had been cracked by discipline, not luck. He let it hit him. He chose the pain. The warden's voice broke the silence. "You interfere with our trial law, Ambassador?" Thalari's tone was all silk-wrapped venom. "I'm invoking Protocol 17, war exception. This prisoner is now part of a recognized military force. You call this soldier?" A slow turn of her 6 eyes. "I call him leverage." He didn't react to the debate. He was already scanning the walls, noting the guard towers, the exits, the timing of their movements. Bleeding, yes, but calculating. Always calculating, he wasn't free. But he wasn't waiting, not anymore. Elsewhere, in the depths of the Kandros Maw, a war station buried in asteroid flesh, an emergency summit crackled into tension. 12 species, dozens of agendas, one united dread: the humans were surviving. Again. They're disorganized, primitive, inconsistent, hissed the Kiroth admiral. But they don't break. They're resourceful, muttered a voice from the back. Too resourceful. A Goran general slammed a three-jointed fist into the table. One Terran survivor proves nothing. Their Earth burned. Their colonies shattered. Their feral, barely strategic, a hollow snapped to life above them. Footage from the arena, frame by frame. Slow motion, the human twisting the Razok's blade mid-strike, letting it pierce through him to catch the angle, using his own bleeding body as a fulcrum for leverage. No rage, no words, just purpose. Silence rippled through the room. Then, they're starting to adapt. Back at the pit, the Tholari diplomat stepped aside as medbots closed in. He waved them off. She studied him. Why not let them fix you? Still silence. Then, you don't fix what's working. He moved past her, dripping blood like ink on stone. The warden snarled from his throne. You can leave the pit, human. But you'll never leave this world. The man turned for the first time, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. He didn't speak, but he smiled, and something in the warden's stomach twisted. In the bowels of the station, 5 guards escorted the human through winding corridors. They mocked him. He limps now, bleeds like any other meat. He'll die by week's end. I'll place the bet. He listened to every word. He memorized every footfall. He counted steps. The one to his left walked with a delay. Prosthetic limb, slight drag, weak side. The one to his right? Too confident. Head turned as he laughed. Bad angle. The lights flickered once. Power reroute. Routine. But to the human, it was the signal. He struck. In the ops tower above, alarms triggered too late. Screams. Smoke. Chaos. One camera caught the last image. The blood-slick Terran dragging a corpse behind him. Not escaping. Just collecting. The predator wasn't on the outside of the cell. It had been inside the whole time. Voice crackled over the intercom. Lock every level. Now. But they were already too late. Because the human wasn't alone anymore. They said we were unfit for war. We were. Until we realized we didn't need to win. We just needed to survive long enough to become the problem. The room wasn't built for heat. It pulsed with quiet, sterile cold, polished steel, alien geometry, the air dry and flavorless. A place designed for order, not for him. The human sat on the floor, cuffed at the wrists, ankles, neck. No chains, just magnetic bonds and 4 armed guards stationed around him. They didn't speak to him, just watched. He hadn't moved since they brought him in, hadn't said a word. But the guards were shifting. Jumpy. The blood had dried on his chest, but the look in his eye hadn't faded. The Tholari diplomat entered, robes trailing like oil across glass. She said nothing at first. Just studied him. Do you know why I stopped the execution? She asked. No response. She tilted her head. I didn't do it for you. Still silence. I did it because of what you did to them. You took something from that arena. His voice, when it came, was dry, like stone dragged across steel. I took a second. She paused. He looked up, jaw clenched. I needed 1 second to see who was watching. He hadn't been fighting for escape. He'd been mapping the chain of command. She stepped closer. You were unarmed. I'm never unarmed. He tugged his wrists. The cuffs sparked but didn't break. Then, I want my pack, she frowned. There were no weapons found, not weapons. My pack, Her expression flickered. "You're not the only one?" His stare was answer enough. Elsewhere, deep beneath the orbital bastion, something moved in the air vents. Small, controlled, breathing timed with the cycling fans. Fingers bare, grimed in black soot, skin like coiled tension. Another human. A woman this time. Younger. Fiercer. She crawled through the guts of the ship like she'd done it before. Because she had. Power routes memorized. Gravity wells mapped. Kill zones noted. At every turn, a tool left behind. A tracker, a charge, a code, not chaos. Preparation. This wasn't a rescue mission, it was a resurrection. Back in the cold room, the Thalari diplomat paced. "You know what you're doing, don't you?" she said. He nodded once. "I'm forcing a mistake." Her voice dipped. "They'll kill you." Then I was useful. A pause. "You should fear extinction," she hissed. He smiled. "Not kindly, we already lived. It." The warden watched the feed from the tower. "No species suffers like humans," muttered the Goran tactician. Beside him clicked his jaws. "They refuse to suffer. Correctly. Then we escalate. Bring. Down the station guns? No, bring in the hivecasters. Empty the lower levels. Smoke them out. They'll die." The warden nodded once. So will everyone else. At that moment, beneath Deck 9, the vents glowed red. Heat, movement, hatch release. The young woman slid from the shaft in a cloud of steam, crouched low, blade in hand, not military issue. Human-made, hand-forged, and then a quiet buzz in her ear, a voice, his voice, through an ancient comm speed. Room 87, Sector 3. 4 guards, 1 asset. He wasn't waiting for extraction. He was calling for war. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She was already moving, and above them, on every deck, the alarms began to sing, but it wasn't security. It was override systems. Failing, locks cycling, lights dimming, and in the dark, the humans were already walking free. Noise is a luxury. Silence is what you bleed in. Deck 7 lights failed at EO312 station time. No explosions. No alarms, just darkness. Then came the static, not over the comms. Not over surveillance, in the walls. The Empire's technicians scrambled to explain it. Static wasn't supposed to happen here, not on the Crownhold. The station was a fortress, built with redundancy upon redundancy. Fail-safes layered like armor. But systems were blinking, logs were vanishing, and in the silence, something moved. The warden stood before the observation glass, arms crossed, jaw flexing. The hivecasters had not yet returned. No footage, no comms, no remains. His second-in-command approached, antennae twitching with unease. 23 minutes since insertion. No pings, no trace. This isn't resistance, it's subversion. "They're not that smart," the warden growled. "No," came the reply. "They're that patient." The warden turned to him, eyes narrowing. Patient doesn't win wars. No, but it survives them. Room 87, Sector 3. 4 guards lay unconscious. Not dead. Not injured, just out. Each pressure point hit with surgical precision. No marks. No alarms. The human woman stood in the doorway now, watching the man. Still cuffed, still seated. "You waited," she said. He didn't look up. "You took your time." He did now. "I had to know who else was listening." Her eyes flicked to the corners. Cameras shattered, sensors fried. "You got your answer?" "Yes," she held up a small chip. "System override. Partial control. We have 4 sectors. How many humans?" 8. He nodded once, then, "Too many." She frowned. "Too many?" "For what's coming?" Somewhere in the command tier, a Goran officer watched a map flicker on his holoscreen. Blips disappearing. Heat signatures swallowed by cold voids. "They're not attacking," he muttered. The Vakul warden didn't respond. "They're not retreating." Still silence. The Goran leaned in, voice tightening. "They're changing the rules." Back in the dark halls, the man walked with his pack now. 8 survivors, no weapons, no gear, no rank. Just instinct. One of them, younger than the rest, whispered, "This is suicide." "No," the man said, voice low. "It's a message." They passed a severed surveillance drone, still humming faintly. He knelt beside it, pulled something from inside. Wires, a node, a data spike. He tucked it into his belt like a ritual blade. Every piece was a tool. Every scrap was leverage. He stood. "They're watching us now." "Good," the woman muttered. "Let them see what survival looks like." But as they moved, another voice crackled over an ancient human earpiece, static at first. Then 3 words: "You are not alone." The group froze. That voice, it wasn't from their team. It wasn't from the Empire. It was another human. Miles below, sealed behind the station's deepest level, a cell door retracted with a groan. Inside sat a figure the others had never met. He rose slowly, face half wrapped in gauze, chest marked with deep plasma scars. A name scratched into the wall behind him. Wells. He stared into the dark hallway, then whispered, "Took you long enough. You don't lose a war when your cities fall. You lose it when the enemy learns your playbook and throws it away." Inside the council chamber aboard the Crownhold, the temperature had risen 4 degrees. Unusual. Everything about the room was calculated to be constant. Climate, gravity, sound. The chamber was meant for control. Now, it tasted like sweat. The warden stood surrounded by delegates from the Tri-Alliance. Vakul, Threnxi, Goran, Shashtari. Together, they governed 8 sectors and over 300 species. They did not raise their voices. They didn't need to. The numbers were doing it for them. Decks offline. 12 personnel. Unresponsive. 89 drones. Destroyed. 61 visual contact with the Terrans. 0. They were supposed to die in containment, spat the Threnxi envoy. "No," said the Goran tactician. "They were supposed to perform, scream, break, entertain. That was the doctrine." And there it was, the word that cracked the chamber in half. Doctrine. The warden stiffened. "You think we failed?" "I think you misunderstood the species," the tactician replied. "Slow and quiet, they didn't break. They bent, they disappeared, they adapted. And now we can't find them. Lower decks. Auxiliary power shafts. The man, still unnamed by his own choice, led the 8 survivors through a bypass. Tunnel. Silent. Focused. Wells was with them. Now. Burned. Limping. Unbowed. "What's your count?" he asked the man. 4 killed. 7 scattered. 8 here," Wells nodded. "And no guns?" "Just hands." "Good, guns make noise. This needs to be quiet." Their war wasn't about bullets. It was about memory, about forcing the enemy to remember them. Every time the lights flickered. Back in the council chamber, something worse than panic began to bloom. Division. The Shashtari ambassador, plated in obsidian armor, eyes glowing green, spoke through a translator drone. "You brought this species here. You claimed they were broken." "They are," the warden snapped. "They are not." He stepped forward. "You mistook silence for submission. They are not. Broken. They are waiting." The word echoed. Waiting. For what? That answer came seconds later, when every panel in the chamber blinked to black, then flickered back on, and on every screen. A face. Human. Not speaking, just staring. Burned. Bloodied. Calm. Wells. And underneath, in a language only humans used now. "You taught us to vanish. Now vanish us. Command systems locked. Communications scrambled. Internal. Sensors redirected. The humans had control, not of weapons, of perception. They chose what the station could see, what the council could hear, and in that stolen silence, the fear finally started. They aren't soldiers, the Threnxi envoy whispered. They're saboteurs. No, the warden growled. They're examples. He turned to the chamber guards. Shut. Down every deck. One of the guards didn't move. The warden barked again. Louder. But the guard only tilted his head, then removed his helmet. A human. Inside the council's guard corps, already inside. The last thing anyone heard before the lights failed again. You shouldn't have taught us how to hide. It wasn't the blood that broke them. It was the sound of breathing behind the walls. The Crownhold was the largest orbital installation in 5 sectors, 15 levels of military-grade infrastructure, anti-grav corridors, memory-plated architecture, automated self-heal tech woven into its skin. It was not meant to die, and yet it began to rot. One deck at a time, lights flickered with no rhythm, doors cycled without cause, floor plating distorted, memory alloys warping from internal stress. A report surfaced. Deck 11 plumbing had gone dry. Power conduits rerouted to nowhere. But worse than the system failures was the sound. Scratching, tapping, breathing, and no source to find. Deep in maintenance shaft, 5 Delta, the young human woman, Laura, paused. She motioned with 2 fingers, silent, then crouched to feel the floor. Heat. Residual. Someone had passed this way minutes ago. She turned to Wells. He nodded once. It's time. She raised her sleeve, revealing a subdermal interface. Human tech. Illegal in every known system. Outlawed for what it did to people, not enhancements, adaptations. She activated the signal. The others would converge. Inside the station's medical wing, a Goran xenopath was reviewing a scan, one pulled from a captured Terran cadaver weeks ago. At first, he thought it was wrong. Blood toxicity, lethal. Muscle damage, irreversible. Nerve trauma, catastrophic. But the human was alive when taken. Fighting. Winning. He ran the scan again. Same results. The Goran leaned back from the table, mandibles flexing. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. The Threnxi assistant floated beside him, voice low and cold. They're not supposed to make sense. Another scan pinged in, this time from Deck 6, live vitals. Multiple humans. Elevated cortisol. No fatigue markers. The Goran stared. They've stopped burning out. They're burning in. Aboard the command deck. The warden watched camera feeds blink off. We've lost the lower decks. No, said the tactician. We've given them away. The warden turned slowly. Say that again. They didn't take those levels. We cleared them. We tried to flush them out, and now they own them. They built something down there. Built what? He didn't answer, just stared at the blacked-out schematics. Down below, Wells crouched in the dark of a maintenance sub-hub. He looked across the group. 8 humans, dirt slick, silent, eyes shining with focus. Behind them, the walls hissed. A hatch slid open, revealing another human, one they didn't know. Older, wearing parts of a Vakul uniform, scar over one eye, breathing shallow. He looked at Wells. You signaled, he rasped. I came. Wells didn't question it, he just nodded once. You remember the doctrine? The man smirked. Which one? The one they didn't teach us. The group around them began unpacking gear, wired together remnants of alien tech, human graphs, and scavenged tools. It wasn't elegant, it was functional. Up in Deck 3 Command, emergency sirens howled, but no alerts appeared on the interface, just a flicker of text across every screen. We crawl, we endure, we learn, one by one. The council delegates began to realize this wasn't just sabotage, it was transformation. They hadn't imprisoned humans. They'd fed them, and somewhere in the dark, something moved through the vents. Not walking, climbing. Maps are lies until they're burned into your bones. The Crownhold's hollow table flickered to life, casting jagged shadows over the faces around it. Wells stood silent, watching the shifting patterns. They called it the burn map, a digital graveyard of every failed Terran attempt, every loss turned lesson, lines scorched across dozens of star systems, battle sites, ambush points, brutal retreats. But there was something else, a grid hidden beneath the chaos. A web of silent routes through space, paths carved in secrecy. This, Wells said quietly, is how we survive. How we fight back. In the dim glow, the Vakul commander scoffed. Primitive tactics. You plot your death traps like children playing with fire. Wells met his gaze. They're not traps. They're promises. Promises to what? The Vakul's voice was a snarl. To never give. Up. The holotable zoomed in on one sector, Xylar 9A. System the Tri-Alliance declared lost weeks ago, but buried in the data, signs of movement, flickers of communications, ghost signals, and then a distress beacon. Human. The warden paced, fists clenched. You want to gamble that they still have strength? That the humans haven't collapsed into chaos? We don't have a choice, the tactician said. If we don't act, the burn map becomes a prophecy. And if we act, we risk feeding the fire. Down in the shadows of Xylar 9's moon, a small squad of humans crouched beneath the jagged rocks. The air was thin, the gravity lighter than Earth. Wells checked his gear, scarred, bloodied but steady. Behind him, his team moved like ghosts, every breath calculated, every step measured, because this was not just survival, it was retribution. Suddenly, a ripple in the static, a signal, sharp and urgent movement. Hostiles approaching. Wells raised a fist. Hold. The squad melted into the rock face. Back on the Crownhold, the warden's face twisted in fury. They'll use the terrain. They'll strike when we least expect. Then we do what we always do. Crush them. But this time, they'll be waiting. The camera cuts close to Wells. His eyes burn with quiet resolve. He whispers into his comm, "Let them come." Then, a flash. A new signal bursts across the holotable. Coordinates unknown. A single phrase echoes in human speech. The hunters are the hunted. Silence isn't peace. It's the quiet before jaws snap shut. The tunnels beneath Xylar 9's moon twisted like a living thing, swallowing sound and light. Wells moved first, the faint hum of his heartbeat pulsing through his helmet comms. No signals, no voices. Only the soft scrape of boots against ancient stone. Behind him, the squad followed, each breath shallow, every nerve stretched taut. They weren't just hunted here, they were the hunters learning the taste of fear. A whisper crackled on the comm, barely audible. Wells. Movement port side. His fist rose, a silent command. Two soldiers melted into shadows, weapons primed. The air thickened. Then, a figure lunged, fast, brutal, not alien, not human, something other. Wells fired. The figure twisted mid-air, vanishing into darkness. The squad regrouped, hearts pounding. This place. It's alive, muttered Laura. Or something is, Wells said. The walls seemed to pulse, like veins filled with secrets. Back on the Crownhold, the warden's voice was a growl. They've breached the inner sanctums. Holomap revealed shifting shadows, human shapes moving. where none should be, betrayal, hissed the Shashtari ambassador. No, said the tactician coldly. Evolution. Deep in the tunnels, Wells found a chamber, a grotesque gallery of human and alien tech fused in ways that made no sense. Carvings on the walls told a story of pain turned power. They weren't just surviving, they were becoming. Predators in a place meant to kill them. Then the worst sound, a low growl from the darkness. Something massive, something waiting. And then the comm went silent. One by one. A single whisper echoed through Wells' helmet. We see you. In the end, all that's left is the fire we choose to carry. The ruins of Xylar 9's surface burned red beneath a shattered sky. Smoke clawed at the air, thick with the scent of ash and metal. Wells stood on the edge of the crater, watching the battlefield unfold like a war poem written in pain. Behind him, the uneasy coalition, humans, Vakul, and Goran alike, stumbled forward. Some eyes burned with hope, others with suspicion. Trust was a thread frayed to breaking. Why do we follow him? Hissed a Vakul sergeant, voice thick with contempt. The Goran beside her replied, because he's the only one who's still standing. Wells heard the words but said nothing. Words were cheap currency. Here, actions were the only truth. The enemy came in waves, machine and flesh fused into horrors no drill could shatter. Bullets tore through armaments, broke under psychic screams. But the humans held. Again and again, pushed beyond every limit, they bled, they burned, they endured. Laura's voice cracked over comms. We've lost 3. Wells clenched his jaw. Keep moving. A flash of movement caught his eye. A Goran officer, clutching a bleeding wound, collapsed at his feet. Betrayed you, he gasped. The squad froze. Betrayal was poison. But in war, it was also survival. Explain, the officer coughed. Blood dark and bitter, they offered me sanctuary. Wells looked away. The cost of trust was written in blood and ash. Suddenly, a deafening roar. The ground shook. From the smoke, a monstrous shadow emerged, ancient tech, alive with fury. The battlefield was no longer theirs. It belonged to the thing that had awakened. Wells drew his blade, scarred, unyielding. Around him, the coalition braced. Fear was aflame, but so was rage, and in that moment, the humans smiled. Everyone else saw weakness. Humanity saw a reason to fight harder. The air burned thick with smoke and despair. The ancient behemoth loomed, a titan awakened from forgotten wars, its metallic sinews twisting in rage. Around Wells, the coalition stood battered, their resolve fraying. Yet, in the midst of ruin and loss, a fire burned. Raw, relentless, human. Wells' eyes met those of his fractured allies. A Vakul sharpshooter with a shattered wing, a Goran warrior bleeding but unbowed, and humans, scarred, exhausted, yet unyielding. This ends here, Wells whispered, voice rough but steady. No orders needed. They moved as one, a ragged spear thrust into the heart of annihilation. The beast's roar shattered the sky, yet every human step was a drumbeat of defiance. They fought not because they believed victory was certain, but because to surrender was death. Pain carved them anew, every wound a story, every breath a rebellion. As the ancient machine tore through metal and flesh, Wells surged forward, blade flashing, cutting through despair, through hate, through the impossible. The Titan faltered. The galaxy held its breath. In the command decks orbiting above, the Imperial Warden watched the chaos unravel. What? Is this madness? A human voice crackled over comms, dry and unyielding. We are not weak. Back on the ground, Wells stood amidst the ruins, breathing hard, bleeding, unbroken. Around him, Survivors, friends and foes alike, stared in disbelief. Because the humans, broken and beaten, still stood, still fought, still lived. And as the smoke cleared, one truth blazed brighter than any star. Everyone else saw weakness. Wells's voice echoed through the shattered silence. Humanity saw a reason to fight harder.